This Sunday is the second Sunday in the Advent season. However, because Christmas Eve falls on a Sunday, on the 24th, on a Sunday, everything is kind of jumbled up. So we're taking a little bit of a license, and we will be reading stories of the Annunciation, of Gabriel's visit to Mary this Sunday, but we're still really staying in that space of preparation. And of course, there are very few texts or tunes that really speak to that anticipation of the season of Advent, quite like O Come, Emmanuel. This text has an interesting history. It is not super old, and yet it is based on a tradition that goes back well into the 9th or maybe even the 8th centuries. And that's called this tradition that we call the O antiphons, or the Great Antiphons. In monastic communities in Europe, in the week leading up to Christmas, at Vespers, at that final office hour of the prayer service of the monastic day, before and after they would sing the Magnificat, they would sing these antiphons that all started with O and then had a name for Jesus. And those names were Sapientia, wisdom, Adonai from the First Testament, Radix Jesse, Clavis Davidica, Oriens, light from the east, Rex Gentium, and then finally Emmanuel. And if you take the first letter of each of those Latin phrases, those names for Jesus, and then spell it backwards, so if you start with Emmanuel and then Rex, Oriens, Clavis, Radix, Adonai, Sapientia, you get arrow cross, which means in Latin, tomorrow I come. So it's a very intricate and sort of whimsical poetic device, these 7 antiphons that were chanted on the days leading up to Christmas. At some point, much later, in the 14th, 15th century, those became versified and set more as a hymn rather than individual antiphons, and then matched with a tune that is almost certainly from France. It also has a very murky history. Sounds a lot like what we think Gregorian chant or plain song should sound like, but it's not really plain song. It really was intended to sound like that, although it is newly composed and comes from more of a hymn tradition. So it's a very atmospheric a way for us to link to our monastic tradition, but it is very much a hymn for us to sing. At the sequence, we'll be singing something that's a lot newer. We'll be singing a hymn that is People Look East, the time is near of the crowning of the year. This is actually a fairly new text. It was written about 100 years ago by Eleanor Fargen, who you might recognize that name. She also wrote the words, "Morning Has Broken." These are sort of her 2 big classic hits. She wrote a lot of children's literature and was moving around in very literary circles. She was good friends with Robert Frost, and with D.H. Lawrence, among others. And she lived a very literary lifestyle in London and lived quite a long life and produced a lot. But of course, then today, she is remembered mostly for these 2 hymns, Morning Has Broken and People Look East. And it's interesting that Morning Has Broken is matched to a Gaelic folk tune, and this text, People Look East, is matched with a French carol. So we have a little bit of that interest in sort of folk culture in there as well. And of course, the choir will have some beautiful anthems, including a setting of the Magnificat as we think about Mary and her response to the angel Gabriel. The Magnificat is being what she says, the song that she sings when she visits Elizabeth. And we have other great tunes and hymns and prayers all in store for you as you continue your Advent journey with us here at St. John.